Hello everyone, welcome back to Morgan Hasn't Seen TV, discovering Dawson's Creek. I don't want to wait for another one of these episodes, Jeannine. It's been
Yes,
so
it's been a
long.
while. Yeah.
Why has it been so long? I'm really excited to be back with Dawson's Creek. I thought that as much when I went to watch these two episodes that we're going to be talking about today on today's show. I was immediately gripped back in, immediately hooked back in.
Okay,
And maybe
good,
that
good.
was because the first episode we're talking about today is a notoriously great episode of Dawson's Creek, as you
Yes,
have
one of my
enlightened me
favorites. Yes.
to that fact. But immediately I was just I felt consumed again. I felt emotionally invested again, and it's been God knows how long since we last did
Yes,
one of these.
yes.
It's been so long, but it's very, very exciting. Discovering Dawson's Creek
Yes.
is back.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
very excited. This was a dream of mine to share my all-time favorite show with you, to really see how you would feel about it. And even though a lot of time has passed, you still seem to hate Dawson. So I'm trying to
Obviously.
wait. Yes. So I'm very much like, okay, when are we gonna get to some episodes where Morgan maybe won't hate Dawson? But it's gonna be a while. So yeah.
I'll give you a clue. It isn't these episodes
No,
that we're looking at.
no. Dawson is
No.
like it's just funny to me that it's his show and like he's a very unlikable character. And he only gets worse. So
Oh, good.
but yes, I've had fun sharing my all-time favorite show with you. So I've really been excited to get back into these episodes. And I'm glad you were
No.
able to just pick right back up and be invested all over
Yeah.
again. So
I mean, it's good because we have a plan. We're better with scheduling than we ever have been these
yes.
days with all our shows,
Yeah.
when we have a real plan to consistently keep up with discovering Dawson's Creek, with
Yes.
all our things and other things we want to do as well. Of course.
Yes.
Let's get straight into it though, because
Yes.
the first episode we have to talk about is Season 1, Episode 7, Detention.
Detention. This
Jeannine.
is
The
an all-time
binder has
yes, a
returned.
Dawson's Creek binder I made in high school when the show first premiered. Pictures, synopses, diary entries of when I first watched the show and absolutely loved it. A picture of my dog who I named Pacey. Yes. So this is where I read our synopses every show. So let's get into it.
Yes.
Episode 106, which is actually episode 7 because the numbering is weird. Detention. Dawson, Pacey, Joey, and Jen all wind up spending an 8-hour Saturday in detention at Capeside High under the supervision of Miss Tingle, the school librarian. Abby Morgan, a fellow troublemaker, stirs the pot by initiating and telling a game of truth or dare to the text is like cut off on this little synopsis.
Oh dear.
Uh to break the monotony of the day. Afraid that Jen isn't physically attracted to him, Dawson's insecurities causes him to fight with Pacey. Um,
Other
yeah.
things happen
Other
as
things
well.
happen. Yes, because the whole side of the text is cut off.
Oh dear.
Yes.
The binder
The
has
binder has
failed us.
failed me.
How has this happened? I think that's all we need to know. Anyway,
Yes,
they get
essentially.
detention.
Yes.
Dawson gets really insecure again. I mean, the peak insecurity, I'd like to point out,
Oh,
from
yes.
Dawson in this
Yes.
particular episode. I know I am here today as well in my very Dawson's Creek appropriate shirt
Oh, yeah,
that's all big and
the flannel
90s and
100%,
flannel.
very much Dawson, so I appreciate the themed outfit.
Very themed.
Yes,
Very
I'm
themed.
very disappointed in my binder letting me down like that, but, yeah, Detention, this episode very much homage of the film The Breakfast Club. We even have our characters wearing very color-specific outfits to distinguish
Yeah.
them. They even call attention to the fact that it is very much like The Breakfast Club in a really fun way, a very meta way. So
As
we'll
you would
get into
expect
all of that.
with movie references in Dawson's Creek. It
Yes,
is
and,
obsessed with
you
it.
know, working with Kevin Williamson, who absolutely takes so much inspiration from movies he loves. We saw that with Scream, of course, so, uh, he loves to put things like that into the show, especially when your lead character is a character who is obsessed with film, so, of course, he's the one who, kinda brings that up.
Yeah. I'd like to point out how everybody obviously ends up in detention.
Yes.
Some are more reasonable ways of getting put in detention than others. I think I don't like the fact that Michelle Williams, obviously was put in detention for just disagreeing with the teacher.
Yes, because
I
this
don't think
teacher
that should be.
obviously has this, like, religious bias against her.
Yeah,
And you know, for him to be putting his religious beliefs and thoughts into this conversation and punishing her for that, very wrong. So Jen definitely, her reasoning should not have been detention worthy.
Jen doesn't need any more stigma against her for being this New York outsider who
Yeah.
nobody likes. She doesn't need any of it. We feel sorry for Jen. We
Yes,
do
so she
all
she
the time.
ultimately she ultimately ends up saying bitch in class, but even in the context, she's not calling anybody a bitch. They're talking about, like, euthanizing people and,
Yeah.
who are, like, on their
They're very
deathbed.
serious topics, of course.
Yes,
With let's
yes,
not it's obviously rather easy to forget that the characters in Dawson's Creek are supposed to be about 15.
yes.
Um, because they're all at least 25 and look it and
They're
also
very
act it.
old. They are incredibly old. Um, but they're supposed to be, you know, whatever, 15. So yeah, they're having this conversation in the class about an article they were supposed to read about doctors euthanizing patients who are on their deathbeds. And so she's talking about how that is a merciful thing. If they're gonna die anyway, if they're in a lot of pain, I think that's a merciful way to go. And he's like, no, because in the Lord says this and that and da 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 da
Yeah.
da and all of that, and life is a gift. And she's like, with someone who's dying on their deathbed, life is not you know, a gift, it's a bitch. And so then she's
Detention.
detention, Saturday
Bad.
detention for
Right.
10. Yeah.
Number one, bad reason to go to detention, shouldn't have been put in detention.
Yes.
Joey fighting back against some
Misogynist.
moron child who decides to annoy her in the lunch line after also annoying her while she's giving a
In class.
presentation
Yeah.
in class. So she
Yes.
fights and throws food at him. I'm all for people throwing food at people who annoy you. I think it's hilarious, and I was there cheering. Joey shouldn't go to detention. Should the other guy, the other guy should go to detention for
Yeah.
being
Grant
annoying.
boating. Yes.
Grant, whatever his name is.
Yes.
Um, Joey, I applaud you. Okay, I can understand why the schools put you in detention, but
Yes.
personally, well done. Dawson, 100% should be
In
prison.
detention.
Prison for
Which
Dawson.
I love that Jen even calls that out because they both end up realizing they're in detention, they're dating, so they go to detention together. And as they're walking there, he's like, "This is so dumb. We don't deserve to be in detention." She's like, "Well, I don't, but you definitely do." Like, so I
Yeah.
love that she's still because this has been built up from the beginning of the episode. So Joey and Dawson are watching a race, a movie with a big kind of race car guy racing for a girl kind of situation. And so they get into this whole conversation about Jen not really potentially being physically attracted to Dawson for being like a manly man type thing. And so she really picks at him and talks about how, well, you know, Pacey, he's got the, you know, he's got the bigger biceps. Because they're watching the movie. Dawson's getting annoyed with it. And he's like, this is dumb. Like, girls aren't into this. Girls are into sensitivity and blah, blah, blah. And like, Joey's like, no, sometimes girls are just into the guy with the faster car or the bigger bicep or the bigger joystick. Which I'm like, okay.
Exactly. We all
Yeah.
need to make these lewd comments about this like
Yes.
this, which of
And
course
so she brings up
James Van Der
Pacey.
Beek's James Van Der Beek's wonderful disgruntledly shocked face that he
Yes.
always puts on whenever
Yes.
anybody says anything that's out of line with what he may think the world is, because of course the entire world revolves around him and his way of thinking, and it must be this
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
he can't
he
he
can't
can't
handle
take
it.
any of it.
Yes. So when Joey challenges that and says, maybe some girls just want the guy with the bigger muscles and all that kind of thing. And Pacey, he's that type of guy. So then when she brings up Pacey being that person, he gets very frustrated. And then they end up kind of watching the movie in silence, and Joey's just like rolling her eyes, like, oh my God, Dawson, you're such a baby, kind of thing. So the
He
setup for
is. He
Dawson to
is.
already be insecure and be insecure about Pacey is already implanted. So then we get to school that day, and Joey or Jen and Pacey are giggling, like he's making her laugh, and he's telling her about Dawson's childhood nickname, which was Oompa
Yes.
Loompa. So he's
A
telling, oh
great
yeah,
nickname. I don't
yes,
understand why he doesn't like it. And we see
yes, right.
later on in the episode, and he gets really, really
He
mad
really
about
gets
the name
upset about that,
Oompa
yeah.
Loompa. Yet he never gives an actual reason as to why he
Why
doesn't
they were
like the
called well,
nickname.
no, he says, like,
I get the feeling.
he says every insecurity he has been wrapped up in people calling him that nickname or whatever. So,
I get the feeling it's because he doesn't want to think himself small. Because
yeah,
Oompa Loompas are obviously rather small people.
yes.
Um, despite the fact they're very useful
Yeah,
and
so he's not
do a
thinking
good
about the
job.
positives of being an Oompa Loompa. He's
There's
only
not
the
many positives of being an Oompa Loompa. There's really
being
not
an
many.
indentured servants to a
Yes.
maniacal chocolate maker. Um,
Insane chocolate maker.
yes. So that's the conversation that he kind of walks up on is Pacey telling Jen about this childhood nickname that he has. And Dawson, like, he doesn't hear. He's like, what are you guys talking about? What are you guys laughing about? And they're like, oh, it's nothing, no big deal. Like, don't worry about it, Dawson, kind of thing. So the gears are going in this kind of whole insecurity. So he's been set up to feel really insecure. So then they're in gym. Pacey's kind of being really cocky to him and talking about he's going to kick his ass in basketball
But
and
humorously so.
yes, but it's just piling on. So they get to the basketball, they play, and then Pacey asks Dawson to play one-on-one with him. He's like, "No, man, like I'm not going to play with you. You're just being cocky right now. I don't want to deal with you." And he's like, "Come on, I want to look good in front of the cheerleaders and you suck worse than I do." So he's like, come on, I'll buy you lunch, whatever. So then Dawson does it, and Pacey continues to be cocky throughout this game of basketball. And he talks about how he's kicking Dawson's ass, and it's this whole thing. And then as Pacey like turns to like call out to the cheerleaders, like, "Hey girls, you're looking at me," uh, Dawson ends up chucking the ball at Pacey, hitting him square in the face and breaking his nose. And he does it
Yes, a
purposefully.
basketball
Like he's pissed and he chucks the ball very violently at Pacey, breaking his nose.
a fast, hard thrown basketball to the face is stunningly violent for him to just
Yeah.
come out with. For the reason that he's a bit annoyed with his friend.
Yeah.
Like,
And
why are we doing this? It's too much. I love that this show we're set up entirely all the time to be kind of on Dawson's side, and then he'll
he
just do
does do
something.
something.
No, whatever it is, it's
Yeah.
like the whole premise of every episode is just like, oh yeah, this type of person is a good person. He's doing the right
Yes,
things,
he has
and then
genuine
he will
motivations.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he will speak or do something, and then we'll go, "Oh no, he's the worst person that's ever existed. I see. He's
Yes.
terrible.
Yeah, like
I
you want
hate him."
there's a setup to feel for Dawson, like his parents are going through their marital struggles, and so it's really frustrating for him. So you feel for him on that aspect.
It's
Um
what makes the show great, I think.
he's very idealistic. He has these big dreams. He is wants to be romantic and charm Jen and treat her better than like the other guys have treated her in her past and all of these kinds of things. But then he says something or does something that totally contradicts those feelings of wanting to like him, and then it's just like,
Yeah.
"Ugh, I hate that I don't like the protagonist of this show." So yes, he ultimately ends up feeling like the one person who deserves really to be in a detention. So I love when they're walking to detention and Jen's like, "Well, I don't deserve to be here, but you do. You hit Pacey in the face with the basketball on purpose." Um, so they get there, and then the only person who really doesn't want to say why they're in detention is Mr. Pacey. He won't say
Yeah,
because
we
it's a
don't know
surprise.
why he's
Yes,
yeah.
it's a very because we see all three of Jen, Joey, and Dawson. We see like somebody tell them, "You're getting Saturday detention," so we know why they're there. We get to see why they're there, but we don't ever see why Pacey's in detention. So it ends up being this big secret. He seems like embarrassed. He doesn't want to say. And then we hear the voice of Abby Morgan. She's our John Bender of the Breakfast Club, also wearing red and flannel,
Yeah.
who is there to kind of just cause trouble and be
The wild
obnoxious.
card.
And yes, and Abby goes on to really do some really great things in the show. Like she's a good bully character who really messes
Okay.
with our crew and shakes things up. So
Well,
yes, we meet
it seemed like this was a good introduction to her,
yes,
because
as the
before
villain.
we even visually see her, I think Joey basically goes, "Oh God, no, that's Abby Morgan." We don't know who
Yes.
this is. That's
No.
Abby Morgan. Oh, this is gonna be
Yeah.
really bad now. We're in here on a Saturday
With
for an
her.
8-hour detention anyway, which also I know is a fundamentally American thing, because this just does not exist in Britain. You can't do that sort of thing. The police would get involved.
Oh my
You can't
god.
just have a child for that
Detain.
long.
Okay.
Also, why is the librarian called Mrs. Tingle? It reminds me of the movie Teaching Mrs. Tingle.
Yes, I mean, if you watch that movie, you reuses names and things like that. Because that movie was directed and written by Kevin Williamson.
Of course it was. Of
Yes,
course it was.
exactly.
Oh dear.
But I think it's Tringle, actually. I don't know if I read that wrong. The teacher's
Ah,
the librarian's
yeah,
name
it's
is Mrs.
close enough.
Tingle. Yes, no, because even if you watch uh Teaching Mrs. Tingle, the principal's name is Mr. Potter, which is Joey's last name. Um,
Really, Kevin Williamson he thinks himself very good, doesn't he? Because he's able to write these eloquent speeches for
Yes, and the
15-year-olds.
town they
Yet
live in is
yet
like it's
he's
not Woodsboro, but it's like something borough. It's like Gatesboro or something is the town they live in.
well, no,
Uh,
but he's all very well and good being able to write all this kind of dialogue and these
yeah,
scenarios. Yet naming, he's just incredibly
very
boring
lazy
with,
there.
apparently,
Yes,
and
yes.
he can't think.
No. He even reuses a little bit of a scream line in Teaching Mrs. Tingle as well.
Oh
Because
dear.
at the end
Oh
of the
dear.
movie where Billy says, she's just a slut bag whore who flashes her shit all over town.
Yes, that's a
we
nice
have
word, nice phrasing.
we
Yes.
have Molly Ringwald in Teaching Mrs. Tingle, who was originally he pictured to be Sydney. He has her say a line as she's talking about like a Shakespeare character, and she says that she's a slut bag whore who flashed her shit all over town.
I see. I see.
So
Well, we
yes,
don't
Kevin
quite
Williams.
get that. We don't quite
No,
get that
no, but
harsh of dialogue.
Tringle turns into Tingle as his career moves up and forward. But yes, that's the librarian who's supposed to be our kind of supervisor
Yeah.
character to these
Look,
kids in detention.
the entire episode really works
Yes.
as this Breakfast Club homage, but as also just this 45-minute long exploration into what on earth is wrong mentally with Dawson Leary, which is just so much,
Well,
because
yes, I
he's
mean,
and it also an explanation or an exploration of, please for the love of God, have conversations with each other, the main characters of this show, and tell each other things that you're actually feeling, because so much of the conflict within this show would be resolved
Exactly,
rather quickly.
but you need the
If
conflict, so
you do need the conflict, and it works, and the fact we think like this, the fact I'm thinking like this and getting this frustratingly invested or invested in a frustrating way,
yeah.
um, with these characters, particularly with Dawson,
Awesome.
shows that it's an effective show. But it shows that it's an effective show. It makes me want to keep watching it constantly, and it's one that I feel like you could just go an entire day, and as I'm sure you have done many times,
Yes.
watching episode after episode after episode. Obviously, we can't do that. I can't do that for this show's reason.
Yeah.
But I want to do that, and I've said in the past episodes of this discovering Dawson's Creek that I want to do that because it makes me get like that. And I love it for doing that. I think
Yeah.
this episode is it's kind of half and half, isn't it? It's almost kind of a bottle episode that is mostly in the one place, dealing with one central conflict of really what's up with him and why is he so
Insecure about
in,
his
insecure about
relationship.
Jen. And we know why, because he learned obviously about exactly what happened to Jen in New York and he can't get that out of his mind. We learned all that in the past
Yes,
episodes.
yes.
But now it's all have some faith in your actual friends, and he doesn't have that anymore because his mind gets taken over with this one incredibly negative thought and just rides with that for the entire time. And the truth or dare concept that gets brought up by the
Oh, yeah,
wild card Abby Morgan
that really
is
stirs things.
genius
Yes,
for
it stirs
this
things up, and
episode to do.
yes, it's perfect. Like you said, it's this very self-contained episode. It also has this fun homage element of something familiar, but it also works to drive the story forward and add some complexity to our characters. Because yes, all of this has been panting up for Dawson. Knowing that Pacey has lost his virginity, knowing that Jen is not the prim and proper virgin that he thought she was, that she has all this experience, is weighing on him and making him feel very insecure. So I like that the conflict was around Pacey, who now has more experience than him, and Jen, him learning that she has more experience than him as well, and seeing this weird coming together of the two of them because he has no experience. So that kind of false narrative that he's bring up in his head makes sense to what we've seen so far, and it kind of
It
all
does.
comes to a head in this episode in a really interesting way, particularly with the truth and dare game, as Abby
Yes.
does. And it's obvious because like Abby is picking up on so much, which I love, because
Yeah.
even when all the girls go to the bathroom, and she kind of says, is it just me, or is there a lot of like sexual tension happening between the four of you? And like you just see like Jen and Joey's feet kind of smushed together under the stall,
Yeah.
like
Shuffling.
yeah, shuffling around.
Because there
But
is, and Abby Morgan tries bringing that out in some cross couple kissing dares and all this kind of thing.
yes, so they're all bored. Dawson, this is where Dawson does bring up, oh, this is so Breakfast Club. And like Jen's like, what's the Breakfast Club? And so they explain it's this movie where these four friends, who hate each other, end up really loving each other and becoming the best of friends. And Jen's like, oh yeah, that movie sucked. Whatever happened to those actors? And so Dawson is listing off what happened to each of the actors. And of course, here comes Pace. He's like, no, Emilio Estevez, he went on to do those duck movies. Those were great. And he's just laughing
No,
to
of
himself.
course they were.
And then everyone's just looking at him, gone silent. And then we move on. So it's this very meta moment as
Stupid.
he was the star of those duck movies with Emilio Estevez. So it was a perfect
I'm
little
glad. I'm glad you
moment.
said with Emilio Estevez then, because I think it would have been a little bit, presumptuous to call Joshua Jackson the star of the
I mean,
Mighty
he
Ducks.
was the lead kid. He was the lead kid, Charlie. Yeah, he was the captain of the team.
Yeah,
He was the one who spent the most time with Emilio Estevez. He was the lead character who we followed the most of the other kids on the team. So, yes, adult lead character movie banking on Emilio Estevez. But the first kid person that
okay.
we're looking at is Charlie, Joshua Jackson's character, captain of the team.
Okay. There'll be no Joshua Jackson slander from
Don't you try
my
to school me on
part.
my man's place in
I,
that show, okay? In that movie,
your
whatever.
man, I see. This is where we're at
Yes.
now.
Yes, that's
But
where
no,
we're at.
this cross couple kissing causes strife because they get really quite into it. Particularly
Yes.
Dawson and Joey obviously
Oh,
get
yes,
a
yes.
little bit into it.
Because of something that Abby picks up on. So they're bored, they decide to play truth or dare. A lot of people end up skipping truth because Joey gets asked, "Who do you like? Who do you lust for? Who do you have feelings for?" And she doesn't want to say because obviously it's Dawson. They ask Pacey, "Why are you in detention, Pacey?" He doesn't want to answer. So then they ultimately end up going to dare. So Pacey gets a dare, and Abby dares him to kiss Jen. So then him and Abby share this steamy kiss. Dawson gets upset. Then the switch around happens since Jen liked seeing since Joey liked seeing Jen kiss Pacey because, she obviously is jealous. She's kind of
Yes.
in for anything that causes strife between Jen and Dawson because she loves Dawson. She was very gleeful at this moment. So when Pacey sees this, he also is starting to become more perceptive and speak on Joey's feelings of Dawson. He says, "Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and kiss Dawson then?" So then Joey and Dawson kiss. They even like change up the music and make a whole little moment out of it. And yeah,
It
it
feels
looks
like a moment though. It
yeah.
feels like a bit of a realization moment that
Yes.
I'm sure at some point or another, and maybe in several different roller coaster ways, will go somewhere.
Oh yes,
I'm
yes.
sure it will. But
You're
it
very perceptive.
feels in the context of the episode of the what we've watched so
Yeah.
far, what I've watched so far, to be like, this is going to play on their minds a little bit now because surely they're both thinking that felt pretty good. Does it go
Yes.
anywhere in the next episode, in the eighth episode? Not
Uh, Not
really,
really. There's
no.
a little a drunken Joey moment that happens in the next episode. But
There
yeah,
is, but it just felt key, and I think this is probably another reason why this episode is considered so memorable and so
yeah.
well loved because it's almost the first instance of something this key happening with these two characters who from the first minute of the first episode we think, oh, okay, these two our lead romance, really, I suppose. No matter what else happens, it's gonna
Yes.
be these
So
two.
when we get to the end of the season, you'll kind of see where things go. But yes,
Okay.
definitely laying the groundwork for later things to come.
Yeah. I think
A- and
that's what this episode does really well. It
yeah,
brings their own, the four of them's dynamics we've seen so far together and sets up a lot as well. Like without being the beginning and end of a storyline, it's almost the peak point of an emotional, I don't know, state, I suppose, for
yes,
them all, which is really good. It's really nice. It
yeah,
gets you feeling that way.
yes. So all of this kind of strife now, everyone's in a weird place, and this is where they decide to take their little field trip outside of the library. They go running off to the gym. And this is where Pacey and Dawson kind of have this rematch basketball game, and they bet that whoever win if Dawson beats Pacey in this little one-on-one game, Pacey will tell everyone why he's in detention. So
Yes.
then the three girls are sitting on the bleachers watching this, and then here comes a moment of realization between Jen and Joey as Abby is kind of the proponent of this conversation. Like Abby kind of straight up says, "It's obvious you have feeling." Like Jen is like, I think Joey makes like a snarky comment to Jen, as we've seen her do previous times.
Many times.
And Jen is very much like, "Why do you not like me? I've tried so hard to be your friend. Like, what's your problem with me? What can I do to make you like me? Because I just want to be your friend." And Abby is like, "It's obvious she's in love with Dawson. So you're never going to be friends if you like the same guy." And then
This
she
is
kind of
what
just walks away.
the entire show has needed Abby from minute one
Yes,
to
just to
walk
say the
in and
things.
just tell them all what
How
they're
this is how you
thinking.
feel. Yes. So then it's a weird, awkward thing. and Joey kind of tries to like hide it a little bit, but it's more obvious to Jen. And she's like, we're not going to be friends. It's fine. Whatever. Like, I like you. It's fine. Like, fine. And so, Joey is just trying to put this wall up because now she's kind of embarrassed. But now Jen, it puts everything into perspective for Jen, and she completely understands what's going on now.
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately they have to run back to the library. They get caught, and Mrs. Tringle makes them like refile a bunch of library cards or whatever. And so this is kind of almost the end of detention. Also, Abby, she also kind of tried to allude to her doing something very scandalous in detention. She says, I'm just going to tell you 3 words: the boys' locker room, ecstasy, and orgy. And so like she's trying to like make out that she did some scandalous sex act in the school, and that's why she got Saturday detention. But then
Because
as the
that's what
library,
happens at 15, of course,
right?
is you get all this ecstasy in, apparently, and have an orgy in
Yes.
school.
Right? So this
When
is
you're
what she's
15.
alluded to that she did to get into detention. But then Mrs. Tringle reveals that she's literally only there for excessive tardies, which I love because if you watch the episode, we actually see Abby being late for class at the beginning of the
Yes.
episode. So it's a little nod to, why she's in detention. And so then they call her out, Abby, really? You're talking about your little ecstasy games, the ecstasy gangbangs. And she's like, whatever. I just like, wanted to have a little fun. Like, I'm just joking. Like, so she tries to play it off like it's not a big deal that she told this ridiculous lie.
However,
but
there
yes,
is
but
there
then
may not be a truth to Abby's sexual deviance, yet there is, as we know from previous
yes,
episodes, a truth to Pacey's sexual
yes.
deviance.
So Dawson
There's no
deems
need
that
to be
he
doing this sort of thing in school.
okay.
It's wrong. It's fundamental. I like Pacey, but this is too far. I'm sorry.
All right, okay. We'll I can't defend this. I can't defend it. But
Thank you. I'm
I
glad you can't
understand it.
defend it.
I understand it.
No,
Okay.
why?
So Dawson deems that he won that basketball game, so then everyone puts the pressure on him to admit why he's in detention. So he talks about how, after Dawson broke his nose, it was bleeding, all the cheerleaders were coming up to him, touching his face, making sure he was okay, and he got a little excited. So he went to the bathroom to relieve the stress, relieve the tension, and the coach walked in and caught him in the act.
School.
So Saturday
In
detention.
school.
Well, when
In
your raging
school.
hormones are just so
No.
uncontrollable,
We've
especially
all been there and not done that in
okay.
school. I'm
He's
annoyed.
now that he's now that he's experienced the act, I think maybe it has his brain chemistry working a little differently because now he, is thinking
Right.
about it even more since he's now done it. So I get it, but I'm obviously very inappropriate, Pacey, and so that's why he's in detention.
I do love how stunningly maturely it deals with your 15-year-olds, though. Like as a show.
Well, yes. I mean, that was always something Kevin Williamson wanted to do. Like, even people would make fun of how the characters talked so eloquently and using these big, $10 words and things like that. But he always said, well, this is my compliment to this generation that
Yeah.
they are just as capable of having these intelligent conversations as anybody else. So he always thought about kind of making these young characters be very mature and talk about things that people don't really see them talking about in on other shows and things like that. So it was really important for him to depict them in a really intelligent way. So I think that was a purposeful choice to have them really delve into these issues with a sense of maturity, even though they're meant to only be like 15, 16.
Well, the episode Detention certainly gives us a lot to ponder over.
Yes.
To think about
yes.
going forward. Should we get in to season 1, episode 8, Boyfriend?
Just to close out, Pacey and Dawson do make amends. they kind of come to a common ground. Pacey is even like, it really sucked that you would think the worst of me. So they make peace with each other. They come to an understanding. He's like, I do not want your girlfriend like that. I would never do that to you, kind of thing. And then Joey also has to come face to face with her feelings. And so she kind of is in the corner, kind of having a little freak out about, Dawson, there's this thing I've been wanting to tell you, but it'll change everything if I tell you, and I just can't. He's like, just tell me. We've been friends forever. You could tell me anything. She's like, no, I can't. It will ruin everything. And I have these feelings and I don't know what to do with them. And so there's this buildup of, oh my gosh, is she actually going to tell Dawson that she has feelings for him? But then Mrs. Tringle interrupts and she is not allowed. She doesn't is not able to say
Yeah.
how she feels. So that's kind of where we leave things with the Dawson Joey feelings. Pacey and Dawson make amends. So that's kind of where we leave the episode.
Yes, for episode 8.
Yes.
Boyfriend.
Which now we get into boyfriend, but we also ended episode 7 with Jen and Dawson confronting the attractiveness, Dawson talking about his insecurities and saying, I want you to want me. Like, I know you like me, but I want you to want me and I don't feel like you
Yes.
want me. And she's like, of course I want you. But, I am just in a place where I need to take things slow. And, I do lust for you and think about you that way. And, but I just want to take things slow. So she does try to reassure Dawson that she does see him in that more physical way. So I think he's
Well,
able.
she had her whole New York situation. She's gonna take
Yes,
emotional time to get over that. Just
exactly.
relax, patience,
Yes.
Dawson, you annoying cretin of a person.
Yes. So Binder has failed me with its cutoff synopses, so we will read the synopses from other
Oh,
sources.
it's failed you with episode 8 boyfriend as well.
Yes, the whole
Dear.
side of the text is like slightly cut off, so it's missing a couple words.
Oh dear.
This was printed in like 1999, so we'll cut the binder some slack. But yes. Episode 8, boyfriend. Dawson feels the heat when Jen is visited by an old boyfriend named Billy from New York and whom is unwilling to let go of the past or her. Meanwhile, Joey lets off a bit too much steam at a beach party by getting drunk after seeing Dawson and Jen together and has to be rescued by Pacey. Also, tensions between Mitch and Gail reach the boiling point as they attempt to rebuild their marriage.
Yes. My favourite part of the entire episode is we're back with Mr. and Mrs. Leary, who have their own issues. And
Yes. So
obviously, so there was the whole situation with,
Gail
Dawson's mom
cheating.
and
Yeah.
yes, and the guy, what was his name? Bob from
Bob, yeah, her
work.
news anchor, yeah, co-host,
And
whatever.
it all coming out in a very emotional scene, and I really like that plot line of the two of them. I like that there's an attempt by the two of them to make it work. It seems like over the course of this episode, they are trying, but it's very difficult. Certainly,
Yes,
obviously, from I forget his name. The dad's
Mitch. Mitch,
Mitch.
yeah.
Mitch's point of view, obviously, because he's definitely the more
Hurt par
punched in the
injured
face
party.
about it. He's
Yes,
definitely the more injured party. But he's also a good-hearted man and a sweet man.
yes.
And I think he does want it. He's willing to keep
Yes.
trying.
And I think where Gail's frustration lies is he is the one who said he wants to try, but it doesn't feel like he's trying because at every turn, everything she does, he
Yeah.
criticizes or dig at her or whatever. So Gail is like, don't tell me you're gonna try. If you don't want to try, okay, that's one thing. I'm not gonna push it because I know I'm in the wrong. But if you're telling me you're gonna try and you want to try, but you're making it difficult by just throwing barbs at me every chance you get, then this is not going to work. So
But
you
he
get
is trying.
so
It's just gonna take him a while, and far longer than it would take Gale.
yes. So, I can see both sides of it. I can understand Gail's frustration in the fact that he's telling her, I'm willing to give this another chance. But at every turn, he feels like he needs to, sling mud at her, which
Yeah.
she knows she deserves. But like, don't do that in your efforts to say that you're trying, kind of thing.
Yes,
Um,
a fair
but
point.
you also get where Mitch is coming from. He's incredibly hurt. So, it's a very difficult thing. And then Dawson kind of having to witness and hear, living with
Well,
this
I mean,
seemingly perfect life for his whole entire existence. And then having to now see his parents, who were literally all over each other for like the first few episodes, now in this really rough place. So, very
I mean,
difficult
it
for
can't
them.
be easy. It can't be. It can never have been easy for the two of them anyway. Having to grow up with Dawson as your child, uh, just a little jab in there.
Yes, of
Just a
course, you had to
little
throw
one.
that in there. So yes, I like
Um,
that we're seeing this subplot kind of play out,
yeah.
the therapist telling them to try different activities. So they do scuba dive. They're arguing about what activity they should do. They try scuba diving, and then they argue about how the scuba lesson went. And so it's just not working. But ultimately,
But
by the end, they
I
come
like
to.
by the end of that episode, they come to the realization and the understanding that everything needs to just be stripped back. They're
Yeah,
trying these outlandish things just because the therapist has told them to try and do these
yeah,
outlandish things, and they need to, go for what worked at the beginning for them anyway.
yeah.
Strip it all back, sit there under the stars, and just badger
Talk.
onto each
Yeah.
other
Yes.
about anything. That's
Yeah.
what works, and that's what worked before. Let's do that again. So I like it.
Yeah.
There's a
Taking it
sweetness.
slow.
There's a sweetness to it all. There's a patience to it all, and I like that about it. I want to see good for these two, even if Gail ultimately is the one
Yeah,
being
like, they
that
make it
has
so
been
you
in the wrong. They have always felt, even in themselves, like a couple you want to see succeed as a
reconcile.
couple.
Yes, you like them together and you wanna see them together. So, I like that they set up you hoping that things will work out between the two of them, which is really nice.
As
Um,
opposed to their child and any of his romantic endeavors, which
yes.
don't
So,
work.
Dawson and Jen seem like they're doing really well. They make plans for the
Seem like
weekend.
it.
Yes, and as they're kind of talking in the hall, Jen spies a familiar face, and tells Dawson, "Oh, go ahead to class. I'll meet you later." And she goes and talks to this guy, and we learn that it's her old boyfriend from New
Yeah.
York, Billy, the one who, in fact, she got caught in bed with by her parents. The reason she's in Capeside in the first
Yeah.
place.
Here's another man who can't let things go.
Yes, and he's this very cool, smooth guy,
Oh,
fancy car.
sure.
Like, we actually see him almost run into Pacey, like, on his way into
Yes, we
town.
do.
Um, so very smooth, and ultimately he kind of ropes Jen back in a lot of ways, but she's trying to like stand her ground, saying, I have a boyfriend now, like leave me alone. Please go. If my Grams found you here, that would cause problems, kind of thing. And he just keeps popping up everywhere. Ultimately Dawson learns about this, and Jen, like, she
It's
ultimately
not
he
it's not
she
Jen's
ultimately
best episode for likability.
no, because ultimately, I think what happens is she ends up asking Dawson to let Billy stay at his house. Like,
Yeah.
why are you gonna
That's
ask?
weird.
Yeah, why would you put this on your boyfriend who's already having insecurities about that, to let your ex stay at his house? So
It's very
very,
strange.
yes. It all culminates into her like saying she's gonna give him a goodbye kiss and be done with him. She gives him this
Which he
goodbye kiss.
does.
Uh and then ultimately she finds Dawson at this party, which we have poor Cliff coming back. Hey, do you know if Dawson, if Jen is single? And he's like, no, she's dating me. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm having a barbecue. So we go to this beach party. So props to Scott Foley for his little comeback, not being
Yes.
completely oblivious to what's happening. Um, so they're at this beach party. She finds Dawson. She tells him she told Billy goodbye, that she was done with him. Joey, her kind of plot point is that her sister has now had the baby. The baby is constantly screaming and crying, so she hasn't gotten any sleep. So she's really
Very
stressed
tired
out.
all the time.
Yes. And she's helping out at the family restaurant, the Ice House, and so she's super stressed. So Pacey grabs her and says, "Come with me to this party, we'll get you to relax and chill and have
Yeah.
fun." And
Let off
Bessie, I
some
love the
steam.
and yes, and I love the relationship between her and her sister Bessie. Bessie's like, "Go, I don't need you. Someone's coming in to cover. Go have fun," because she's seeing what her baby is doing to her sister, and she wants to let her sister have this time. So I love moments when we just get to see glimmers of Bessie and Joey and their sisterly relationship and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
But it's
Um,
nice. I mean, it's nice of Pacey as well. Obviously, it's showing
yes,
Pacey
I
to be
like
a good friend.
yeah, because I mean, it's really been established more that like Dawson and Pacey are their own unit, and Joey and Dawson are their own unit. So I like when we see moments of Jen. Why do I keep saying Jen? Joey and Pacey being friends,
Yeah.
and elements of their friendship. And even in this episode, he's also kind of again razzing her about her feelings for Dawson and that kind of thing, and calling her out on it, and really kind of making her think about it. So I do
It's
like building up the Joey Pacey dynamic because that also will play into later things as well. And
okay.
seeing
What
them more
later?
as
Later. I assume you mean
later,
later
later,
things
later.
in later in the show, because it does
Yes.
play later into the
Y-
episode. The episode is a very strong episode for the Pacey Joey friendship.
Yes, I mean, and we'll also get another episode that really leans into it a lot more. But I don't think we'll
Okay.
get you're not really going to see this develop into anything probably until I think like season 3. So it's
Oh,
really
a
just
long
it's
time
it's
off.
it's planting seeds, but I like that we're seeing kind of different characters interact in this foursome.
Yeah.
Um
Basically,
s-
all that happens at the big party is Joey gets far too overdrunk, and
yes, well she starts
understandable. She's
drinking.
15 and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, but she starts drinking heavily at the party when she sees Dawson with Jen. Because she goes to the
Yes.
party to see Dawson, hang out with him. She knows that him and Jen are on the out, so she's like, "I'll go," so she's excited that Dawson
Everybody
won't be with Jen.
everybody's got such bad reasons for doing things
You
though, haven't they?
right?
It's like, "Oh,
Yes.
my best friend is about to break up with his girlfriend. I love him,
Let's
so
party.
I'm going to go in for the immediate rebound job."
Exactly, and then she sees him with Jen, and she starts to drink this Thor-looking guy comes, like, long blonde hair,
Oh,
starts
yeah.
offering her drinks,
I
and
questioned
she's
whether this show was set in, where? Massachusetts, I guess? Maine?
yeah,
Up there.
yeah.
New Englandy
Yeah,
area.
Capeside is Massachusetts, I think. Yeah, Capeside,
It's gotta be
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Massachusetts, hasn't it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, or Connecticut,
No, it's
or
Capeside,
Rhode Island.
Massachusetts.
It's one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
And not in, like, Florida or California, because this man doesn't look like he belongs in New
Capeside.
England and does look
No,
like he belongs in California or
like
Florida instead.
yes, a very interesting looking gentleman is hitting on Joey.
Gentleman.
Um,
I wouldn't call him a gentleman.
okay,
He's
yes, true.
a little bit handsy and a little bit
Yeah,
forceful.
a little bit, and he doesn't even know her name. He's calling her like Chloe. Um, So Pacey, follows her and the guy's like trying to kiss her and stuff. And so Pacey knocks the guy out. And then
Yes.
she falls to the floor, falls to the sand because they're at a beach party. And Dawson comes over
Sand
to check on
everywhere.
her, see if she's okay. And then she's like, "Thanks, Dawson. Thank you, Dawson, for saving me." And Pacey's just like, "What? I
What?
just pushed that guy out for you." So a kind of
She's
cute moment there.
obsessed, Jeannine. She's become obsessed with him. She's become
Yes.
too outwardly obsessed with him. All the secrets that she's been keeping, have too many of them have been spilled out, that it's
Bubbled
now just at
over.
every given opportunity, she's just, I love Dawson. I love
Yes,
Dawson's
it's
the
all,
greatest
like, fresh
ever.
in her mind for sure. But even at this beach party, Jen and Dawson are reconciling. She's like, "Yes, I sent him away, da 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 da." But here comes Billy popping up at the beach party. He's like, "That goodbye
Yes.
kiss didn't say goodbye." She's like, "Yeah, it was just a goodbye kiss, like Dawson. It didn't mean anything." And he's like, "No, it did mean something. So why don't you come with me and we can talk things out?" And so she literally goes with this man. Like, excuse me,
Yeah.
Jen. Like,
I
so
mean,
she ends up going
look,
with Billy. Um,
when you're phrasing it like this, Dawson's insecurities seem a little bit more
Valid.
justifiable
Yes.
than uh, than I first envisioned them to be, because
Yeah.
I just have my agenda. But when you say it like that, it is very valid, actually,
Yes,
for
she's
him to
making
be a
this.
little bit concerned.
Yes, she's making Dawson house this man. She gave him a goodbye kiss. He's lurking around. He asked her to go with him. She goes with him. So Dawson definitely winning some points to the validity of his feelings in this episode. So then Pacey and Dawson ultimately end up taking Joey home. He gets Joy on the couch. They have to kind of sneak her in so she doesn't get in trouble for being drunk. I love Pacey in this moment because we have established she goes to the video store earlier in the episode saying, please, can I rent the English Patient? Because that seems to be the only thing that puts Alexander the baby to sleep. It was on cable and he knocked right out. So I need a copy. So that's
Weird
kind of the
movie
thing,
for a
right?
child to sleep to,
To
but
fall asleep
okay.
to. Yes. So while Dawson is getting Joey settled and asleep on the couch, Pacey is telling the whole story of the English Patient to the baby to keep him quiet, which is so cute and like just speaks to a charming moment of Pacey, right?
Also
Um,
speaks to how do you know such depth about the story of the English Patient? How many times do you have to have
I
watched the movie
mean,
The
we
English
establish
Patient?
him. He's a cinephile, not as to the degree of Dawson, but he is. He works at the video
But,
store. Maybe he just has it on while he's working in the video store. You don't know,
but
like
the English of all
uh,
movies.
he knows enough. Okay, so he's telling the story of the English Patient to this baby while Dawson is getting Joey settled on the couch, and drunken Joey reaches up and kisses Dawson in this
Yes,
drunken moment, and
again,
then
two in
yes,
two episodes
and
here.
passes
What's
out.
going on?
So it's very much now laying the pebbles in the groundwork for this situation, potentially.
Yes.
So then, Jen, she ends up having her whole talk with Billy. Um, says
Away
she's
with
kind of
Billy. We don't want
away
him.
with Billy. Yeah, she sends him away. Dawson finds her on the dock. He goes to talk to her, and she ultimately breaks up with Dawson. She
Yes,
doesn't break
that's
up
where
with
we
Dawson
end
for
our episode.
Billy. She breaks up with both of them and realizes, after everything I've been through, I just need some time to be on my own. And I'm
A
probably going to regret.
reasonable, a
Yes.
reasonable suggestion.
And I'm probably going to regret my decision every day. And I'm probably going to look at your house and want to change my mind because I really do care about you and you've been incredible, but I just need to be on my own. And so Dawson, of course, gets very petulant and throws a dig at her before
Annoying.
walking away. And
I don't know why he
yeah.
can't just be sad like he should be, and he has to be annoying and petty. Like,
Yes.
you're supposed to be a sad man.
Yeah.
The entire character of Dawson is sad man, right? Sad boy,
Yes.
whatever you want to
Sad boy.
phrase that
Yes.
sort of
Yes.
character
Just
as.
look at that meme. I'm so excited for you to get to that episode with the
Exactly.
crying meme.
Why does he also have to be sad boy, but also horrible?
Horrible sad boy. Um, so yeah, that's where it ends. Jen breaks up with him. He's super heartbroken, and that's where we leave things with
And you
Dawson and
wanted me
Jen.
to stop watching it there for the next one of these we do?
Yeah.
I can't stop watching Dawson's Creek after
Well,
watching
this
that.
this will not be the last time we see Billy.
Oh,
Yes,
interesting.
there's gonna be an interesting dynamic that happens,
Mm,
involving Billy. So, we shall see.
intriguing,
Yes.
intriguing. It does. It's great to be back with Dawson's Creek. I think the
Yay.
detention episode
So
was
good, right? Yeah.
everything you had promised it would be, and did feel significant. But this, boyfriend coming as the epilogue to the feelings that were explored in that,
Yeah.
um, is interesting. Of course, it
Yeah.
ends that they've only a handful of episodes left in the season. 5, in
Yes.
fact.
Yes.
So where we're going to end up by season's end, I don't know, because it feels like we have been on a Big Dipper roller coaster going up and down, up and down, up and down for 8 episodes now.
Yes.
So God knows where we'll end up by 13,
Yeah.
and that's just one season. I really couldn't give
Yeah.
that possibility in my mind, but it's a very emotional way to end off. Understandable one from Jen's point of view. I think Jen We'll do
Made the smart
a
decision
lot
by
of
the end of the
made a
episode.
smart decision, a tough decision, a smart decision. Go on your own. Gail and Mitch trying, stripping things back. I like to see it. Dawson finally having to actually put up with not being in a relationship with somebody again. I get the feeling Joey's going to become involved in
Yeah, the
that
peeling
sense.
the peeling back of her feelings for Dawson and having to face them,
Yes.
and yeah.
And unfortunately, Pacey being on his own at the side like he always seems to be.
Yes, so Pacey will kind of not have a ton to do kind of going forward, I don't think.
Pacey's being sidelined. I don't like it, Jeannine.
But no, we will get, as I said, we will get an episode which will establish more of a relationship between him and Joey.
Well, that's
Um
true, yeah.
so
Interesting.
there'll be some things happening with him, but he won't really be the focal aspect going into these last couple episodes. So I'm excited for us to finish season 1, and
Yeah. Well, I
love
mean,
that
to
you're
be fair,
loving the show.
he did have the major storyline of the first half of
Yes,
the
he did.
season, didn't he?
He
So
did. Yes.
we can't forget that, even though it has
But
been about
Pacey's
40
star,
years since I
right?
watched that.
But Pacey's star will shine again. He'll have a lot to
Good,
do going forward. So,
good.
um, yes, and
Exciting,
you will fall
exciting.
in love with him as I have. Um, Especially in
Or is
season
that just
2, he
Joshua
gets a new
Jackson?
haircut.
Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Does everybody get a new haircut?
Yes, they do
Oh,
actually.
well, that's
Dawson
okay
does
then.
as
That's
well.
fine.
Dawson does as well. Yeah.
That's fine. Well, yes, good to be back with discovering Dawson's Creek. We will be back very soon again with episodes 9 and 10 of season 1. I don't know the
Yes.
names of them because we haven't looked at that yet.
No,
But they
we'll get
are
into that.
episodes 9 and 10, or if your binder is to be believed, episodes 108 and 109.
Oh, we
Stupid
are getting some good
numbering.
episodes. We are getting some good episodes.
Okay.
108, the road trip, and 109, probably another very favorite episode, the scare.
Okay, but really it's episode 9 and 10. We're not using the
Yes,
stupid naming
the
convention of
10
episodes. We're not
this
doing
and
it.
10 that. Yeah.
I refuse to. It's silly. But yes, there we go. Subscribe, ding your notification bell on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel, where you are, of course, watching this right now. You are. There's been things scrolling down at the bottom of the screen, social media links, Patreon, donation if you want to support us that way. They are all in the description of this episode. If you want to go down there and follow us and support us doing all that, of course, subscribe to the main It's a Wonderful Podcast feed on all your major podcast platforms for all the beautiful shows we have over there. Of course, very exciting things coming to Morgan Hasn't Seen and It's a Wonderful Podcast, of course. All things It's a Wonderful Podcast. It's very exciting. It's always very exciting, but I think there's only one thing left to do. Jeannine, take it away.
3, 2, 1.
Bye.
Bye.
Dawson's Creek.